Aha, so there is an epidemic of male loneliness. It got almost twice as worse. Now, let me tell you why that's bullshit. Well, why that's not the complete picture. Is chronic loneliness, or is that a problem? Right? 51% of men are single. That's a ton. That's a ton. And a lot of I words will blame modern culture for this, especially dating apps, right? And I agree, dating app sucks. Tinder sucks. I don't like it. Finding a match is way better to do in person. If you're trying to find a match on Tinder, you're really trying to find a needle in a haystack. You're gonna meet someone for a date and it's not gonna click because of course it's not gonna. It's very unlikely to click on a date with a random Tinder person. Even if you share some preliminary, shallow information about each other, yeah, it's not much. It's not enough to be able to establish a baseline, right? However, we have to ask ourselves: is the whole incel problem new? Did the world change so that now we have more single people? This is from 2020, 3 years ago. 4 now. Ooh. Let's look at 40 years ago, 44. So this is a census from 1980 in America, the only country that matters. So we have numbers for the year 1980 and 1970. Okay, so do we think that in 1970 and in 1980, we had 50% of male under the age of 30 who were single? That seems too low to me, right? It feels like in the 70s and the 80s, yeah, you could get a girlfriend like that. No problem at all. We're not going to have the breakdown exactly 1829, but let's take a look. So we have here 1980s. Singleness under 25 for men, 13%. Okay. And for adults 25 to 34, 28%. Okay. So we've got a single rate of 20%. In the 70s, same thing. Well, not exactly the same thing. It was lower in the 70s. It feels pretty obvious that back in those days, we were pushed to marry earlier. Makes sense. Okay, well, it seems that yes, that whole 50% is new. However, the fact that it rose from generation, not related to modern dating apps. There was already a strong tendency, 15% in 1970, 28% in 1980, for men to be single. 13% rise in singleness for men in 10 years. And, you know, the dating scene hadn't changed much, but values had. Now, marriage wasn't as promoted. It wasn't seen as important to be in a relationship. Okay, but I'm now right back. Poof. We can just use 1980 for our needs. But okay, so yeah, the incels were right. There's way more single people, right? 50% of men versus at best 28. That's a 23-point swing. Aha, so there is an epidemic of male loneliness. It got almost twice as worse. Now, let me tell you why that's bullshit. Well, why that's not the complete picture. We're staying here. 28% of men are single, 25 to 35, versus 11% of women. Wow, women are finding dates, no problem. That's a 17-point swing. Now, what was the point swing now between men and women? In less than 30. Again, the ages unfortunately doesn't quite match, but it's mostly fine. 17-point swing for 25 to 34. It's a 19-point swing. Mostly the same. Mind you, I picked the largest point swing here. Like the under 25 is smaller. That's true. But a 2-point difference, that's small. That's a small gap compared to now. We have more single people, not just more single men. That number has risen almost as much for women. It's not because men are getting left behind more now. More people are staying single because it makes more sense, according to the environment. In 1980, did people focus on their studies as much? Did they focus on college as much? Oh, probably not. They started working earlier. So they started trying to form a family earlier. Now, people in their 20s, they're not trying to start families. Of course not. You're not stable enough. You're still trying to get your career started. In 1980, well, it was way easier to start your career. So, more people started relationship. It's where they were ready in their lives at that point. Now, people in their 20s are not ready to start long-term relationships. And that's why it's higher for both sexes. And again, a 19% swing is something, right? It sucks for those 19% of men who are single. It's because you're young. It's gonna change pretty quick as your goals in life evolve. And if you look here, in the 30 to 50 range, the 19-point gap is now only 8. It shrank by a lot. And furthermore, you can see that when you go to much older age, 65 and plus, now the rate of single women is much higher than single men. Partly because men tend to die younger, because we have more dangerous jobs. Still, not as much as before, but still. And of course, older women are seen as less desirable. It's harder to date if you're a woman widow than if you're a man widow. It's weird. It's the same word in English. Well, French is superior. Of course. Yeah, so this whole epidemic of singleness, no, it's the same. It's the same too for old ages. So we don't actually have a new problem of too many single people. However, we definitely have a problem of single people going online and getting other people to tell them that no, you've been fed lies, my friend. You weren't. People in the 1980s, they weren't fed lies. Again, I'm gonna remove myself. Boop. Looking at this 1970s, big gap. Still for men and women. 10-point gap, 7-point gap. There's always been a gap between men and women when it comes to dating. It used to be smaller because people were hastened in their decisions to start a family because they didn't have to focus so much on their career, especially women. Again, now, you could argue, and I would argue, that now the gap between women and men should be smaller because women are focusing way more on studying in their career than in the 1980s, right? Now you need that to survive. You're not living off a single income household. So you think that number would be way higher. But it's not. It's remaining stable. The gap is remaining stable through the ages. Again, I'm not saying that's good. I wish everybody would be able to find a match and be happy. It's not like some new phenomena. It's not.